Thank you so much. So, moving on, we are going to deal with cybersecurity issues in the public cloud space. For over the years now, there has been a lot of transformation and transition into the cloud. Most organizations are, adopting the public cloud the most, and uh, we've seen a lot of SaaS applications in the cloud moving from the on-prem environment to the cloud environment, and there has been a lot of security threats in that area as well, because the more technology is being explored, the more it's also opening to cyber attacks and all that. So one of the things I want to also ask that will ask is that what common mistakes do people make when securing their online account, especially when using cloud services?
I mean, from my perspective, I think people make all. I've seen people make all types of mistakes, from whether it's due to identity, the way they configure their identity, their application, their data access, or maybe like their infrastructure. So people make mistakes in all kinds of areas, and there's a reason for that, because again, like these areas are new and they evolve rapidly. I'll give you like an
Mm,
example. So there's like a blog series that I do, maybe at least twice a year. So I look at all the updates, like
okay.
let's say Microsoft has released to the Azure platform over the past 6 months. And then at the end of the year, what are the
Hmm.
updates that they release? And constantly you see the trend going up. I think last year it was almost about 400 updates, right? So now imagine, like, from a security perspective, trying to assess the avenues to misconfigure all of those new features, and what's the
Mm,
impact of all of these new features on your security. Not many people will be
mm,
studying like all those features in depth to understand what are the risks associated with all these 400 updates. But that's the kind of
mm,
pain that people are dealing with. So there's mistakes from all kinds of angles. But I guess, like, if we look at the recent breaches in the cloud that has
mm.
affected major organizations, a lot of them tends to center around identity and access, right? A lot of them has to
Wow.
center around identity and access. Microsoft recently had a breach on their side. That was
Mm,
so I think it was the Midnight Blizzard threat actor that compromised like some
mm,
aspects of Microsoft. What was the mistake that the Microsoft security team made that led to that breach? Identity. They had a
mm.
test tenant. They had their corporate tenant where they had MFA everywhere and all of that stuff. But then they have a test. They had a test
Wow.
tenant, and in the test tenant there was a guest identity without MFA configuration. But then they also had a
Are you
service
kidding me?
principal. Yeah, but it's true though. If you think about it, like how many organizations enforce MFA in their test environment? Many people will say in production,
Mm,
yeah, definitely, but in the test environment,
they're
oh,
more
okay,
concerned with the production.
exactly, exactly. However, there was a link between the test and the production, which was via a service principal,
Wow.
right? Which nobody noticed. So somebody probably just configured something to test something and left the service principal there. And that was how the threat actor, in this case, Midnight Blizzard, came in via that account,
Mm,
exploited the service principal to move over to Microsoft production account. So you see like a lot of like those type of toxic combinations when it comes to in relation to identity. So if I were to rank it, I'll probably put that as number one in terms of identity and access misconfiguration. It's still the main part that's exploited when it comes to
mm.
cloud breaches.
Wow, wow. So, it's very true. Misconfiguration in the cloud environment has been so enormous. Has been one of the most common mistakes organization make. And what do you think? How can this be remediated? How can this be checked so that such reoccurrence will not affect and impact businesses?
Yeah. So a lot of that, with the way many organizations are handling that, has to do with leveraging things like posture management tools, right? So you have tools like in the category, so what Gartner calls like CNAP, like Cloud Native Application Protection
Yeah,
Platform.
Synap.
Yeah, which
Yeah,
consists of
definitely.
certain technologies like CSPM for security posture management and CWP for workload protection and some of the things. But here is my own stuff with that. It's sort of like similar to what happens with health. So you probably have seen it before, where when you talk to someone, you're like, you probably shouldn't be involved in that health habit, right? You probably shouldn't be smoking that much or getting drunk like that. I know I shouldn't be doing that, but I'm not doing that. The same thing happens
Yeah.
in cybersecurity, where people go, I know I should be doing all of this stuff, but I'm not doing it. Maybe it's overwhelming, right? It's
Yeah, and at
maybe
the end of the day, they become compromised.
exactly. But then also like there's other parts that's involved. So for example, like I've seen security team goes, well, I'm not pulling the trigger because I'm not sure what the impact would be if I start enforcing all of
Mm.
this to the business and then things start breaking and then I get into trouble. So there is like a long, arduous process for organizations to do. But essentially, there's no like silver bullet, there's no one stop solution. It has to be a combination of having the right tools with right processes. And you have to go one step at a time. So start with probably like your most critical assets, understand the different ways that it could be configured. Maybe use a CSPM tool. There's some of them that are free and open source out there. There's some of them that are commercial. So maybe start with that, but then focus on your most critical assets, and then maybe expand as you learn through that process of identifying misconfigurations and having policies to prevent misconfigurations rather than doing the
Wow.
firefighting approach of trying to kill everything, taking that preventative approach of, okay, we're seeing a lot of these misconfigurations in production. How can we
Mm.
stop it from coming into play to begin with? And then running it back
Wow.
through that approach.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. For the sake of our time, we just try and look into other questions we want to ask and have clarity on. So top mistakes from complaints and misconfiguration, and that has to be looked into by organizations, cybersecurity teams, and all that. We've seen a lot of data evolution, and companies are now migrating to the cloud. You understand? So we've seen a lot of companies, operating the multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and all that. And some are also operating fully, public cloud environment. I want to ask that, what are the top concerns that, what are the top security concerns businesses should consider when migrating to the cloud?
Yeah. So I guess like for many businesses, the goals of security is straightforward, is the same, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. The goal of security is to protect an organization from digital risks, right? That could stop the organization from
Yeah,
pursuing their purpose. So an organization has a mission, they
yeah.
want to achieve that mission, they don't want anything blocking them from being able to achieve that purpose. So I guess whenever they're going into the cloud, the same approach is necessary, right? Take the same approach in terms of what are your most critical applications, right? What are your most critical data that you're storing in this new environment? What are the risks of them being impacted by, let's say, an adversary or by a threat actor? And taking the approach of what is the most cost efficient way for you to, as an organization, to make sure that you mitigate those risks or the most critical ones that could potentially impact your organization from being able to fulfill its purpose.
Wow. Wow, that's great. One question to back that up is that, can an organization fully operate in public cloud without hybrid environment? So let's say an organizations that have been working, that have all their data before in an on-prem environment in their data centers and all that, and they are considering moving to the cloud, because of the capex, opex, cons and pros, and they
Yeah.
feel that moving their data and operations to the cloud would, they will be able to cut down on expenses and all that. And do you think that organizations or companies can fully work in the cloud without any security breaches or any concern,
Yeah.
without any infrastructure in an on-prem environment?
I mean, it's possible. because we have many organizations today that use that approach. They're 100% using public cloud services for all the applications and all their services. But organizations are also different. They're different types of organizations, and they have different challenges, different things that, like, for example, like organizations like military organizations or defense organizations. In some cases, they have certain types of data that they need to keep, a more tighter lead on, in which case they may
Yeah.
not be the best for the public cloud. Financial organizations also have those sort of like things relating to healthcare, for example. In some cases, maybe due to availability reasons, there's certain data or things that has to be local, and for good reasons in terms of like healthcare, because that's something that could impact like a human life. So I guess there are different challenges that different types of organizations has to consider. But in regards of, is it possible? Yes, it's possible to be 100% in the cloud and to achieve very good security to mitigate a lot of the risks to your critical asset. It is possible, but as an organization, you need to have a look at what you're trying to achieve. And to your point, sir, one of the things that happened, I'm not sure if you've seen the blog that was written by AWS on, we changed from serverless, from microservices back to monolithic applications.
Listen.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So because what happened was even AWS themselves, like I think the Amazon Prime team, because what happens is that people sometimes get all these new technologies and services, and people just dive head into them, and then they were like, hold on, actually we're much more cost effective doing monolithic than converting everything to serverless and microservices. They're like, this is actually better. And they put out a blog and says, hey, I think it was about a 90% or so cost savings. Think about that. Like about 90%, like we did this, we thought that was what we needed to do. And then we looked at the numbers and we were like, the numbers are not matching up. And we went back and we saved 90%.
No, 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 no.
So organizations have
Wow.
to, but the thing is that not many organizations have the skills or the knowledge to delve into that details to look
Yeah.
at, is this the right approach? Is this not the right approach? Many people just hear like the buzzwords, we should be in the cloud. And then they call up somebody and they're like, what do you think? Yeah, you should be in the cloud, and let's go to the cloud then. so but yeah, it is possible.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. But I think from what you just said, having an hybrid environment is still the best so that you can have, you know, your data at close proximity than having everything in the cloud. So that when there is any form of breaches and all that, you still have your data and privacy secured within your environment. One more thing I would also like to ask is that um what's what steps should be taken if a company experiences a cloud service breach? You
Hmm.
know, we'll be talking about security and all that. So when there is a service breach in the cloud, what are the steps that should be taken in order to remediate that?
Whenever there is a breach, like similar to like, yeah, the analogy I like to use is the analogy of like a case of the pandemic, right? The first thing you want to do
Mm,
is contain, right? If you remember the
yeah.
situation that we had in Nigeria with unfortunately the brave doctor that passed away, was the Ebola
Mm,
doctor, I've forgotten her
yeah.
name, the brave doctor, right? She's one of like a role model that I look up to, a very, very brave lady. So the first thing that she did when she like, oh, here's what's going on with this patient, contain it immediately, right? To spread, to mitigate the impact. And that's one of the things that you want to do is,
Mm,
number one, you've identified a breach in the public cloud. Number one is you have to contain it. And some of those has to be designed as part of your strategy to begin with, right? Because sometimes the
mm,
way you design your architecture determines the level of containment that you can do. If you've not implemented the right strategy for, let's say, microsegmentation, trying to contain a breach into a tiny segment will be difficult, right? Because you've not actually architected things that way to begin with, right? So
mm,
number one, contain it and stop, the impact from progressing. And then number two is that you want to capture as much current data as possible. Why? Because that is how
mm,
you can get the data to learn about how what happened, and how you can prevent it from happening again. So maybe that's
Mm.
taking snapshot of disks immediately. Maybe have automation template where you're taking snapshot of disk immediately, taking snapshot of the current configuration of things, exporting all the logs and making sure you keep all of that information intact for your forensics, and then go back to have a look and see how did this happen. And then of course you do like your preferably like your blameless postmortem where you say, how do we stop this from happening again? But start by containing the breach, capturing the existing data, and then doing your postmortem afterwards.
Oh, okay. I have two more questions as regards the cloud, which is you've really spoken well about how to respond to protecting cyber attacks when there is data breach in the cloud, and I think there's also some frameworks as well that one needs to observe in following to be able to ensure that those steps are followed through thoroughly to contain cyber threats in the cloud. But one more questions I would like to ask is that moving to the cloud, how does moving to the cloud, change an organization's approach to disaster recovery, and incident response?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So, but this one, it has to do with like the way the organization has architected their services to begin with, right? So, what you find in the cloud is that in some cases, that's actually part of the service. For example, we talked about Azure earlier. There's a service in Azure called the Azure Storage Account. Whenever you create a new storage account in Azure, it has redundancy built in. So by default, when you're storing your data there, it's storing your data across three storage clusters in the cloud. So by default, Microsoft are like, okay, we don't want you to come back and blame us for data loss. So whenever you're storing your data, we're not going to store it in one place. We'll store it in three places so that in case something blows up, we still have two other places where you can get your data from, right? But then as you go further, you realize that there are other services that you
Mm,
adopt that will give you the option and the flexibility to pick. Hey, do you want to synchronize this into another availability zone, which is another data center in the same cloud? Do you want to synchronize this into another region in the same area? Do you want to synchronize this into another region in an outside area? So where customers have the flexibility to pick that. And there are some cases where the cloud provider won't provide you that option. You are responsible for understanding that there is no built-in redundancy. There is no option for me to configure it out of the box. I have to go build my own script to do it myself. So when an organization is looking at that, make sure
mm,
that you have a clear understanding of the types of services that you're using, and make sure that you've consulted the cloud provider's documentation on building redundancy for that service that you're using. So don't just, it's not like a single, like wide approach. Don't just assume it's there by default. In many cases, it's not there by default. In
mm,
some cases, it is, but in many cases, it's not. So you have to make sure that you really understand like all of the things that you're doing. And one of the other aspects is to also keep in mind is from the attacker's perspective, make sure that you've taken
mhm.
into consideration um, if something happens that compromises even your redundancy plan. So that's where organizations go into things like multi-cloud redundancy. Okay, I'm going to be using. Oh, by the way, there is a
Yeah.
very interesting story on this. Very interesting story on this on an organization that had all in the cloud on AWS, and it's a true story. They
Wow.
accidentally set an access key on GitHub, and then an attacker got a hold of the access key, logged into their AWS account, and the attacker deleted every single resource and wiped every single thing clean across all the regions that they were using in AWS. It's a really bad attacker, right? Not even asking for ransomware, if he just wiped everything clean. And the business closed down. That
I think,
business, we didn't hear about it anymore. It closed down
jeez.
completely. They could not do business anymore. Everything got deleted. So, which is
Wow.
why some organizations will say,
I, 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 I'm thinking he's an angry. It was an angry employee or ex-employee.
exactly. It sounds like that. Let me see. So it's like AWS deleted resources. So yeah, those was like a very popular company then, and essentially the environment just got compromised and everything just got deleted. Well, let me see. I think I can see like the name. So what's the name? Yeah,
Wow.
it was called Code Spaces. So it was called Code Spaces. They were running in AWS, and an attacker got access to that and wiped everything, and the company went out of
Wow.
business completely. So that's where like maybe organizations can look also into multi-cloud where you're replicating not just in one cloud, but then across multiple clouds in case something crazy like that happens. You still have some of your application deployed in Azure that you can, pick things up from.
One more thing, because we also need to touch base on common man or
Yeah.
common people. When I mean common people, everyday users, they are not just organizations and all that. Is there any risk or impact to their data in consuming cloud services? What impact does cloud services or cloud infrastructures have on everyday users? If there's any, or you get that, sir?
Yeah, definitely. They're definitely this. So a lot of it is like similar to like what we talked about, right? So for example, maybe some of like the common people that we're talking about are using like a popular service these days, ChatGPT, right? One of the
No,
questions that
yeah.
I ask people is you're using ChatGPT, you probably put in sensitive information in ChatGPT. Some people will copy their financial information, their health information, and put it in ChatGPT. Information from their job, right? Yeah, I just put it in ChatGPT and say, summarize it all for me. Then I ask them and I say, how many of you have MFA configured for your ChatGPT access? Very few people do, but you put sensitive
Mm,
information there all the time, but you don't have it protected, right? So you see, sometimes people even put passwords there, right? They copy everything that contains username
wow.
and password and just put it there and just go, give me the update on this one. And your password is not there, but you don't have MFA
Wow.
that's protecting it, right? So people still have to have that level of consciousness. I think that if we can just get like the common people to just go, whenever you're storing your data in any service,
Mm,
make sure you have MFA. The basic,
mm.
make sure it's non-negotiable. Um,
MF, which is multi-factor authentication.
multi-factor authentication, yes. So
Yeah.
whether that via your phone, make sure you have multi-factor authentication, because that will protect you from a lot of like the most common types of breaches and scams and stuff that's out there, right? Somebody
Mm,
cannot just guess your password and be able to access your data or your services. You get
mm.
prompted for that second level of protection. So that's what I'll say.
Wow.
If you can take care of that, that takes care of a lot of the MFA everywhere. But one of the story I should
Wow.
tell you also with this one because it happened to me. So I have MFA everywhere. That's my policy, right? Any service that I'm using, email, ChatGPT, Dropbox for storing data, any cloud service that I'm using, MFA everywhere. But then I was going to help my sister out with some of her kids sometime, and I forgot my phone. I wasn't able to log into anything. So that's one of the things
Anything.
about the MFA everywhere is you probably want to have redundancy if possible. So
Yeah.
MFA
Yeah.
everywhere with multiple devices. So if you can afford like two phones or two devices or maybe two types of MFA, so do
Mm,
it. So that way, in case you lose one,
mm.
you have the other one.
Yeah, there are other forms of MFA. Might be having the pink the OTP sent to your email address.
Yeah,
So you can access the email address on your laptop or your phone and all that. So it doesn't just have to tie to a token that is
yeah,
tied to a phone. You
yeah,
understand? So just ensure that you have MFA across your social media accounts, bank accounts, platforms. It saves you that stress of people hacking you. If someone gets your password, they won't bypass the chances of bypassing MFA is very little compared
yeah,
to brute forcing your password. So
yeah.
get MFA and it helps. Please, we have two questions from the community, and
Okay.
that would I would say we'll put an end to this episode. So the first question from the community that we run is that since I'm into networking, like
Mm,
network engineering, and I'm trying to move into cloud, is it
mm.
mandatory that I do something similar in cloud? I want to focus on I am in cloud, but I don't know if that will be a challenge.
Yeah. So what I'll say is it's not compulsory that you do like networking in the cloud. But one of the things that I've found with learning, and I'm not sure if you found this for you also, sir, is
Mm,
it's better to start with what you're familiar with and then go to the
yeah,
unfamiliar. Right? So it's sort of like
yeah, yeah,
go into the deep end of something that you're not familiar
yeah.
with. Your mind can get overloaded, like, oh my God, what am I doing? Is this even for me? Am I even qualified to even do this? All of those doubts begin to kick in. But if you're familiar with networking already and you see IPv4, you're like, okay, okay, I can do this. I know IPv4. Okay, yeah, 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 I know this one. You're more comfortable. So even though you don't have to,
And
I would say use that as your gateway to start and then
gateway,
go to
yeah,
high
and then
level.
everything is interconnected, whether you like it or not.
True.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Thank you
absolutely
for
right.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the second question. I'm a year in practicing network exploits, web exploit, and soon mobile exploits. That's has to do with penetration testing and red team, basically, and its vulnerability assessment. So I decided I need another field knowledge so that I'm dynamic. So I looked at 1 year system administrator, networking, second year cloud security, third SOC, which has to do with the blue team. So I opted for system administrator, which is why it was in the community that we established. So I've been thinking, would both red team and system admin work together and make me a hot cake, or rather, cloud security or SOC is a better match skill to have alongside penetration testing?
I like the term the hot cake one. So, so I wish I had definitely like system administration skills and red teaming can complement each other. Like what you said earlier, sir, nothing is wasted. Everything are interconnected. They are integrated with each other. Personally, I'll consider system administration as a foundational skill for some of the other ones that you mentioned, right? So, because again, in order for you to be able to secure anything, you have to understand what you're trying to secure to an extent, right? Which system
Mm,
administration gives a lot of that to you. So, in terms of like being hot cake or not hot cake, what I will say is, it depends. It varies from different area to another area. The area that I'm in, cloud security engineers and architects are in high demand, because it's a
yeah.
newer area. Not a lot of people in the area in that area, so it's definitely in high demand, and it will definitely make you a hot cake if you're able to get your system administration foundation mastered, and then you had on top of that maybe some cloud security or some either red teaming or just pure cloud security. It definitely puts you in a very unique position compared to others.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, David, for your time tonight. I really, really appreciate this session. We've done justice to cloud security, your cyber security journey, and I'm so sure that people will be, they will be glad to listen to this episode and gain those insights from you. Thank you for watching, and the link for all these platforms that we mentioned, AWS community, the Azure community, and how you can get access to those community will be shared in the video in the description below. So this is a night time. Cybersecurity is a very wide field, highly demanding field. If you look at the job opportunity now is very high, but the skill gap is very low. So there is no time that is very late for you to start. You can start your cybersecurity career anytime because it doesn't know age. Cybersecurity does not know age. Security breaches does not know whether someone is young or old. But if you have the skills and you can be able to secure a company data and assets very well based on the skills that you've acquired over the years, you'll be an hot cake. So keep working, keep keep working, keep your foot on the ground, keep your hand dirty, and you're going to get to the top. Thank you so much, David, once again. So we'll come to the end of this episode now, and thanks for watching. Please don't forget to share, like, and comment. And share this to someone that you think would need it, and also use it for your personal enhancement as well. Have a lovely night rest. Bye.